Hello, good afternoon. You're watching Business Plus. I'm Shweta Kothari. We're bringing you stories from the world of business policy and economy. First up, the top story that we're tracking at this hour, over 10,300 crore rupees was siphoned off from the country by cybercriminals since April 1st, 2021. This as per the Indian Cybercrime Coordination Centre, the I4C, of which agencies managed to successfully block only around 1,127 crore rupees. The country also witnessed a massive jump in people reporting cyber frauds, with Indian Cybercrime Coordination Centre saving 15.56 lakh cybercrime related complaints that were logged in the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal last year alone. A massive jump of 60% from 9.66 lakh complaints that were registered in 2022 and nearly 5 lakh complaints registered in 2021. Now, the I4C says that more than 5,000 complaints of cybercrime are being reported on the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal, of which 40 to 50% are based on frauds that are committed by gangs which are operating currently from China as well as pockets of Cambodia and Myanmar. Cybercrime remains one of the top concerns of the government and of people. Joining us right now is Kanish Kaur, CEO of India Future Foundation. With me is Karthik Malhotra. Let's quickly go into this conversation and delve deeper as to what the problem is. Kanish, good afternoon. Thank you for taking time out. You and I we at TV9 have been taking up the mantle of talking about cybercrimes for a while now. And the latest numbers, a staggering number of over 10,000 crore rupees, go on to suggest the problem is far from over, in fact, not even addressed.
Yes, Shweta, the problem is far from being addressed. This is a profession right now. People are taking cybercrime as a profession. You mentioned China. In India, there are at least 8 to 10 pockets from where this is run professionally by gangs which dupe people. You mentioned about some of these hotspots, but places like Bharatpur, which have come up as a new place where cyber fraudsters are operating, they are causing massive scams. And they are not only impacting common man, but banks, insurance companies, big tech companies, plenty of them are getting duped. And there are new methods of frauds which are there, typically used by them. So places like Mewat, Nuh, Bharatpur, Jamtara, all we are aware about, these are hotbeds. And the biggest issue is they are creating new techniques. Earlier, we used to hear about OTP-based scams. Now today, they are using QR code-based scams, creating fake websites, creating cryptocurrency-based frauds. So this is just far-reaching today.
Okay, so from OTT based to now QR code and also cryptocurrency related crimes, the crimes have sustained, in fact, grown at a momentous rate of over 5 lakh complaints annually. The number not looking very good. You know, Karthik, as we discussed this story in the morning, one of the things that came to my mind was that each one of us, in one way or the other, have been duped in one way or the other, or at least we know of somebody who has been duped in the past 1 year. The numbers are looking very, very bad. What can the government do, and what should the government do right now to prevent this from happening?
I think, I mean, if we have not been victims ourselves yet, I believe, unfortunately, so it's only a matter of time.
Absolutely.
Because like Kanish said, the fraudsters are finding newer and more innovative ways of scamming people out there. And you said we know of somebody. I think we would be able to count at least a dozen people on our fingertips who have been victimized by some cyber crime one way or another.
So do you think the 15 lakh figure that we have at the moment...
This is just the reported figure, Shweta. There are so many people who may not actually report the amount. If the amount is, let's say, 500 rupees, 1,000 rupees, you may think the effort of going ahead and lodging a complaint, even if it is online, even if it is on a portal, may not be, realistic enough.
Far conservative, therefore, from what the actual figure could be.
There are enough people out there who would have been duped who might not even know of the reporting mechanisms. So that is one part of the problem. I think the larger problem here is that while you have these hubs operating in India, there could be perhaps, some measure enforced by the government, and there is this new app called Pratimb, which has been launched by the government, which has been able to nab, let's say, about 450 odd cyber criminals in pockets of Jamtara and Deoghar in Bihar. But there would be, I think, the problem would become that much more pronounced when the money is actually siphoned out of India. Now, in an eventuality like that, and that is what I4C has reported, then if that money is gone, that money is gone. The Indian government is not getting that money back. And it is going to be next to impossible for the Indian authorities to go ahead and trace these international crime centers where such frauds are actually taking place from. Kanishk also mentioned about courses being run to train people on cybercrime. In fact, Kota, a city which has been known in Rajasthan for coaching people for IAS and civil services and UPSC exams, is also running courses reportedly on cybercrime. And these courses come as cheap as, let's say, 20,000 rupees for a full module, going up all the way to a couple of lakh rupees. These are courses being run in hearts of our cities, in educational hubs, which for whatever reason we are able to do precious little about. But I think the most important story I want to come to here is that we also allow platforms to operate in India which have become hotbeds for cybercrime to take place. And I4C has named OLX as being one of them. And OLX, in fact, on its website has an FAQ, has a full explainer on how to not get victimized by cyber fraud on their platform. And yet they've done precious little thus far to actually create a situation where there is better KYC compliance alike for both buyers and sellers. Anybody can come on the platform, trade numbers, knowing very little whether the person on the other side is a genuine buyer stroke seller or a fraudster.
All right, and we do have a statement from OLX at this point in time, which I would like to read out for the benefit of our viewers. It says that OLX strategy for fraud prevention is a three-pronged process, which is prevention, education, as well as resolution. So OLX is therefore saying that we are doing what we can in order to prevent these frauds. But, you know, come to think of it, OLX joins a list and a plethora of other platforms which have been named in I4C report, Kanishk, which are doing absolutely next to nothing to prevent these frauds.
See, OLX has been used for a very long time for frauds, and OLX hasn't done anything. You would see people would appear as army men who are willing to buy bikes from people, willing to buy, you know, scooters, and they would send these fake QR codes. There were so many complaints which came to me because of OLX-based frauds. OLX did not create a mechanism for detecting or dropping. The biggest issue is most of the buyers which appear on OLX are fraudsters. So OLX today has done very little on preventing any kind of abuse its platforms has been under. There have been tremendous complaints which have come to me personally, also to our helpline at India Future Foundation, where OLX-based scamsters are duping people, and there are organized criminal gangs which are operating from these hotbeds of Jamtara, Nu, Mewat, and Bharatpur, which pose even as buyers from different police forces, and they will create these fake IDs and send it to people. So OLX should at least have a verifying mechanism to prevent some of these frauds from happening. So OLX, at least I would say, is one of the worst platforms when it comes to handling some of these frauds, and it hasn't done anything proactively.
Okay.
Some of the other platforms have actually done much better in terms of
Could you
building
perhaps
mechanisms.
name some of these other platforms, Kanishk? I mean, you say that you receive complaints on a daily basis from places or marketplaces or perhaps internet sites that allow cyber criminals to use them and to operate from. Could you name some of these organizations?
See, we get complaints from common man who are accessing these platforms for buying and selling goods. Like similar to OLX, there are other platforms which are there, but the level of frauds are much lower. So there could be people who would want to buy and sell on e-commerce websites, but they have a trust and safety mechanisms. They have security controls which they have built in. But platforms like marketplaces like OLX have been worse. There are competitors of OLX who have done far better. But in terms of the complaints which come from OLX, they are far-reaching. Even after sharing some of those reports, not much was done. The bigger issue is company like OLX. While they have an India presence, they are part of a larger group which is based out of South Africa, and they run from Netherlands. So they have their global teams which sit outside India. They haven't done a proactive mechanism to detecting frauds or preventing frauds, specifically to look at the India market.
Okay, but this is not an OLX specific problem. This is a problem that many internet users have to face, Karthik, Kanishk, again and again. Every time you're trying to use an internet portal to get either a service or a product, you are likely to meet some of these miscreants who will try and take money from you. I've been a victim of cybercrime and you know, not quite ashamed to say so, because it was very, very believable. Someone called me as a delivery person, said, we have a packet that belonged to you. Can you please pass on the OTP to us? And I did, and I realized there was no packet. I never really ordered one. Yeah. But because you are lost in the process in your day and you don't really know what's happening at the back end, the money which was in the wallet of that particular service, that money was taken off. So it's literally every person that I know, including myself, every second individual who's been a victim. I want to understand, what can these private companies do, Kanishk? Now, you talked about how, you know, OLX is not doing enough. I'm sure there are plenty more such organizations which do not have stringent KYC compliance, which do not have, haven't taken, in fact, enough measures. What sort of measures should they take now in order to prevent cyber crimes or cyber criminals from using these platforms for their purposes?
So first and foremost, they should have a proactive trust and safety team who could be reached out in case a fraud happens, right? Not just a email ID, but a team which can proactively be reached out. Second, this team should be able to work closely with the law enforcement. So if a police complaint has been registered, say on a platforms like OLX, then how will they partner with the police in supporting the investigation? And if they find perpetrators, they could be blocked. The second part is, which is more important, is how these platforms cooperate among themselves, because a cyber criminal will not just operate on one platform, but multiple platforms, right? Some of the big tech do this. If they identify a fraudster operating, they will share that list and they will block some of these numbers. The third part is doing KYC. The KYC, anyone who is coming on the platforms, they would have some kind of an ID. How do you verify that ID is genuine and not a fraud, right? Now, there are multiple platforms which government provides, like the digital locker, which you have an authentication mechanism to store your digital IDs. So you can do KYCs via using digital locker services, or you can pick up any of the other mechanisms where there could be OTP based authentications, which could be multi-factor, both on mobile and also on your email. So you verify the correct person is there. Now, issue is people create these fake Aadhars, people create these fake PAN numbers. Using them, they'll create their own profiles, right? Now, how do you ensure these are taken off? You need to have proactive measures, and then you also need to ensure that you are creating some of these best practices and start sharing with your end users that these are new frauds which are coming to light. Please safeguard yourselves. Banks do it. Banks do it proactively in India, you know, State Bank of India, ICICI Bank. But some of these platforms haven't done enough. Right. So this is one of the, they can also run campaigns. So organizations like Paytm runs huge campaigns across India as a company. You were talking about some of the competitors. I think Paytm is a fantastic organization. They do a lot of awareness campaigns. They also cooperate with law enforcement agencies. So I think there is a lesson for a company like OLX to take from a company like Paytm, because Paytm has been doing some fantastic work.
Absolutely.
I mean, at the sound of, not sounding very confident about the measures taken by OLX, and unfortunately, we invited the management of OLX to be on this conversation and they refused to participate, and they only issued this statement that we flashed on the screens. I think the problem really is that if a company is serious about addressing cyber fraud, they will put in more checks and balances, which OLX unfortunately has failed to do. And it really needs to pull up its socks if it really wants to continue owning the trust of people and do business in India legally. But I think on the side of the government, on the side of authorities and organizations that follow cyber crime, I think very strict warnings need to go to organizations like OLX to ensure that user safety, the safety of their money, becomes the responsibility of the platform on which they are transacting.
Absolutely.
And the second point I want to really make right now, Shweta, is that the ease with which mobile numbers are dished out to people also needs to come under scrutiny. And even though some measures have been done to tighten it, why should one individual still be allowed to own up to 9 mobile numbers. It absolutely defeats all logic as I can think of. If you need 9 numbers, you're pretty much running an organization and you're not an individual. So at some level, the telcos also need to be pulled up, and platforms like OLX marketplaces where buyers and sellers can interact directly, not through the platform but one-on-one, peer-to-peer, really need to pull up their socks.
Absolutely. In fact, the new Telecom Act, the rules which will be put into place very, very soon, is making it stringent on people, not just telecom operators, telecos, but also on people as to how many numbers that they can own. 9 is the higher
too
limit.
large a number. Why would you allow somebody to have 9 numbers? Surrender 4 numbers if you really want a new number for some reason.
Absolutely. Fair enough. But I think government doing its bit there as far as, taking measures to protect people, also asking telecom operators to come out with a uniform system through which they can identify spammers and they can put a hold or a stop on that. But that hasn't happened so far yet. Cybercrimes, cybercriminals continuing unabated, extracting money, duping people to the tune of 10,500 crore rupees since April of 2021. Those are the figures that have been reported by I4C. Kanishkar, thank you very much for joining us, for taking time out, for enlightening our viewers as to what some of these platforms can do in order to prevent cyber frauds from happening on their platforms. But with that, it's time for a short, quick commercial break. We'll be back in just a bit.
Ram's Ayodhya rebuilt. Ram Lala's Pran Pratishtha. Countdown to January 22nd. Dateline Ayodhya. Catch the mega coverage only on News 9 Live.
वर्ष 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा.
There is certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
This was intended to be a terrorist spectacular without precedent.
The plan was to bomb 2 Air India passenger aircrafts simultaneously.
There was a loud explosion and the whole plane just vanished.
The police dropped the ball, the intelligence officers dropped the ball, and the politicians dropped the ball.
It was a conspiracy that destroyed my life. It destroyed 331 lives.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Welcome back. Electric vehicles has become a buzzword in 2023, with India sales charging past 1.5 million units in 2023 alone, showing a stellar growth in all segments, from two-wheelers to three-wheelers to cars to SUVs, goods vehicles to buses. EV sales were encouraging on all fronts as the shift to electric mobility picked pace in 2023 with sales growth of 46% year-on-year. India is gearing up to beat its past record. This begs the question, will government continue subsidizing EVs? Remember, the government had launched FAME 2 scheme in 2019 with a budget of 10,000 crore rupees. By December of 2023, over 12 lakh vehicles had been subsidized, costing 5,422 crore rupees. The Ministry of Heavy Industries is now set to be working on the third phase of faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles, or FAME 3. The ministry is looking to allocate 26,400 crore rupees for FAME 3, with subsidy for electric two-wheelers getting around 8,000 crore rupees. Electric buses are likely to get 9,600 crore rupees, and electric three-wheelers may get 4,000 crore rupees. All in all, FAME 3 likely to further subsidize India's EV segment and could spell that EVs will continue to be perhaps little less costly in 2024. Joining us on the show is Sai Gridhar, Secretary of FADA. Kartik Malhotra continues to be with me. Sai, thank you for taking time out. I want to first begin by asking you, as far as the numbers of 1.5 million units sold in 2023 is concerned, is that in line with what was estimated at the start of the year? And what is the estimate for 2024? What sort of figures are you looking in sales for electric vehicles?
So, hi, thank you for hosting me today. So, as you rightly said, as far as electric is the future for us, and we know that dependence on fossil fuel should be limited, and we should be looking at alternative arrangements for transportation and for commuting from one place to another. And as far as electric is concerned, government definitely plays an important role, and the FAME subsidy is one of the key parameters for the growth in the segment. And yes, you rightly said the electric segment is growing. In fact, I have the data with me from January till November. These are the registration figures. If we talk about overall, the electric segment has grown by 50%, more than 50% in fact. If you talk about the overall industry, as far as automobile industry is concerned, so the growth was close to 10% overall, if you consider ICE and BEV together. But if you consider only and only BEV vehicles, the growth is more than 50%. If you take segment-wise, three-wheeler is one segment wherein we've seen the fastest adoption rate. So as on day, overall close to 53% of the two-wheelers which are sold are electric in the segment, and then it's followed by a two-wheeler which is close to 5%. So definitely the growth is there in the entire segment, electric.
All right, the growth is in the entire segment. You know, one of the debates in 2023 that perhaps we also delve into, Kartik, was should government take the subsidy route? So should they make it cheaper for someone to own electric vehicle, or should they make it more lucrative for them to own electric vehicle, which is to put infrastructure in place? And I think we all came at a consensus that both should go hand in hand.
I know, but will the government be able to afford both is the million-dollar question. In fact, a 26,000 crore rupee question actually right now. So Shweta, I think, effort obviously has to be put on both sides. Which of the two should the government subsidize and prioritize is something that the government will have to work the math and figure out how much can they afford and what is the real need right now. Now, look at, let's say, there is FAME 2, which made affordability of electric two-wheelers far more easier for most people because of the subsidy of up to 50,000 rupees per vehicle. Now, if the same amount was, instead of giving that amount in the pockets of the people who are buying electric vehicles, if the same amount, 10,000 crore rupees, was used to make the charging infrastructure that much more efficient and that much more easier to come by for two-wheeler owners, then perhaps a very natural organic pickup in the EV sector, not just for two-wheelers, but even for four-wheelers, when you talk about end consumers, might have taken off better. Okay. Now, let's see what is happening in the rest of the world. Now, for the first time, we've seen an electric manufacturing car company called BYD has beaten Tesla with its total number of electric vehicles being sold, right? I was recently in Singapore, and in Singapore, all the cab sharing apps that I was using, Grab being one of them, where anytime I would book a taxi, I think easily 7 out of 10 cars that arrived to pick me up were either electric or hybrid. So that brings to the next question, which is a better model for India? Are we looking at electric mobility pure play as electric, or is hybrid the route that we want to take as far as our electric ambitions go?
Or should it be a mix of two?
Or, yeah, so I think the investment will have to be made disproportionately in one versus the other. What do we really want to build? If we really want to invest in a lot of electric highways, then the focus of the government has to be electric and electric only. Then forget hybrid. But FAME, by definition, includes electric mobility
as well
and
as
hybrid. Now, the questions that arise for pure electric mobility is that until we reach that 100 gigawatts of renewable energy in our power grids, then electric vehicles are still going to continue to be pollutants because they are still reliant on thermal energy as compared to hybrid vehicles, which still use petrol as the main source of fuel, but give so much better efficiency that the emission and the usage of petrol is that much lower that it becomes more environmentally friendly.
Right.
Now, specifically on four-wheelers, the government has given a tax subsidy both on the custom duty when you're importing machinery to build electric vehicles, and tax SOPs up to, if I'm not mistaken, 1,50,000 rupees for individuals who go ahead and buy an electric vehicle. So I believe the government has subsidized the sector enough, and the learnings from FAME 2, which resulted in confusion over manufacturers on whether batteries need to also be made in India or imported and yet avail of the subsidy. I think the government first needs to get its definition very, very clearly articulated to manufacturers so that there is no confusion on the government first doling out the subsidy and then trying to recover it back. And that should be the lesson it learns from FAME 2. But I think FAME 3, to my mind, needs to first understand, should it be electric or should it be hybrid, and hence subsidize either manufacturing or post sales of only that one particular focus area, not subsidize everything.
Okay. Sai, I don't know if you have the numbers with you, but if you could quickly also run us through what are the sales figures for hybrid versus electric, pure play electric versus hybrid, just so as to put this into context of what are people actually buying.
I'm sorry, I don't have the figures for the hybrid, because hybrid, again, the definition is a bit confusing in the sense that there are mild hybrids, there are strong hybrids in India, and I would probably agree with what Karthik is saying, that we need to prioritize what we want to do in India. So our take is it's not supposed to be only electric. So if it's electric, so we need to pick the segment in which we want to go 100% electric. Say, for example, conversion in two-wheeler segment, be going 100% electric would be far more easier than doing the same in passenger vehicle. If you see the developed markets across the world, even in the passenger vehicle segment, even till date, even those markets have not been able to do the kind of conversion which they are looking at in the passenger vehicle segments. So we need to prioritize which segment we want. And apart from hybrid and electric, I think we should be even talking about the ethanol, the blend of ethanol which is there. So we've seen places like, if we talk about Brazil, wherein they run their vehicles 100% on ethanol. So today we are talking about a blend of 20%, which going ahead, which the Indian government has, in fact, they have reduced the timeline for the for the conversion from 10% to 20%. So the blending, yes, we'll be doing it in 2025 now instead of 27. So what I think is that it should be a blend of everything. So even if we talk about hydrogen, so hydrogen is also one technology which probably would be coming in the world in next or be couple of years, and hydrogen is one technology which could probably help doing especially for the commercial vehicles, with the vehicles which are doing more than 300 kilometers a day. So so it would depend on the usage of the vehicle which we are talking about, and probably with the length and breadth of our country and the kind of number of vehicles which are being sold in our country, I think it should not be dependent on only electric. It has to be a blend of a mix of everything which is available.
And when we talk about electric, I think the focus needs to also be on finding new batteries outside of the lithium-ion ecosystem, which KPIT with its sodium-ion batteries, for example, is looking at testing sometime this year. So things that materials, minerals which are available in India to make in India and making in India more
easily mined, easily available, because mining is also adding to pollution for that matter.
So we need to be clear on which technology should we focus on rather than just blindly dishing out subsidies.
You know, it's interesting because I've been a part of the Leaders of Road Transport Conclave from TV9, and one of the learnings that I've had, having spoken to transporters, truckers, people who are in the road transport sector in 3 states now, is that no matter what policy government is making or doling out at the center, the realization at the bottom is absolutely nothing when it comes to, especially when it comes to commercial vehicles. So I've hardly come across somebody who actually has a commercial vehicle fleet, barring 1 or 2 startups whose only idea of the startup is to have a commercial vehicle fleet. An EV fleet, they say, is extremely expensive at the moment, very, very difficult to, you know, you've got to put up that initial capital.
And then 50%
take the hit on your margins.
50% of the cost is the battery.
Absolutely.
So if you don't really have a clear policy on battery swapping, is that ever going to work? Because not every vehicle will have the same battery size, battery capacity. So I think battery swapping is something the government needs to be very, very clear on. Is it a go area or a no-go area?
Absolutely. And you make it cheaper initially in order to get more customers, but at the end of it, plying an EV vehicle on road is more expensive at the moment as opposed to plying an ICE engine vehicle on road.
When you look at the capital as well as the running cost.
Invested as opposed to the running cost. So all of that would also need to be taken into consideration. You know, Sai, before I let you go, perhaps my last question to you would be, looking at all the data points right now and having spoken to, I'm sure, all the players in industry, what is your ask of FAME 3? If the government is still making the policy, they're still finalizing the contours, what should they definitely include or should not include?
It has to be a mix of everything. That's what I probably would request the government to do. So it has to do with giving subsidy also, because we've seen what happened in two-wheeler industry. So the moment they reduced the subsidy, it had a direct impact on the retails of electric vehicles. So I think, it is a very tricky thing for the government to decide. But what we personally believe is that it has to be the right blend. They need to find the right mix of everything. So we need to have the infrastructure also ready, infrastructure which is actually being properly maintained. So today we've seen that most of the electric charging stations are defunct. 80% of the charging stations which were set up earlier are not being used because
we have 2 examples on the roadside across our office. In fact, if you take that turn outside our office in sector 125 Noida,
they're both defunct?
There are 2 defunct charging stations. So
absolutely.
I think Sai is absolutely right in his observation.
So we need to understand why those charging stations are defunct. Those charging stations are defunct because they don't have the required number of vehicles coming to that place for getting charged. So the cost of running those charging stations is not viable for the person who has set up those stations. So you need to do a helping hand for those people who are setting up these stations, because it has to be blend of everything. So you cannot leave things for granted that probably in coming years everything will happen. If these charging stations are being set up and if they turn out to be different, then again it becomes a deterrent for people, especially in passenger vehicle segment, for going ahead and buying those vehicles, because you cannot buy a vehicle only for your city drive. It has to be city and intercity drive, everything it has to cover.
Absolutely. It has to be more valuable than driving it for fun and joy. It has to be more economical for everybody, because in India, people prefer economy, people prefer goods and stuff that they can afford but can also last with them for a longer run of time. Sai, as much as I would like to have this conversation any further, I can't. I've run out of time, but thank you so much. We hope to get you back very, very soon. It is as interesting as it gets, and I believe it is capturing imagination of the people all across India. People taking to EVs more than ever in 2023. Will 2024 be the year of the EVs? We don't know. We hope so. But with that, it's time for a break. Thank you very much for watching.
October 27, 2023, the world awakened to a new crisis.